Hello everybody. Okay, Lab 6, Part 2. We're going to pick it up in Step 4. Alright, but before we do that, just one more thing about Steps 1 through 3. Okay, when you do those inserts, do not hard code the foreign key values. Okay? We always do subselects to find those foreign key values. Don't hard code them. Okay, so you've done that on previous labs, and make sure that you do that on this lab. Don't be tempted to hard code those values. And if you have a difficult time with those subselects, then get help from your peers, from Josh, from me. Okay, but don't hard code the foreign key values. All right, on to Step 4. I'm going to share my screen here. And go into my VM here. And here we are, Step 4. We're going to modify the design of the common lookup table. So first, let's talk about what the common lookup table is used for. Why do we have it? What does it do? And then, why do we need to modify the design of the common lookup table? Okay, then we'll look at what we're going to modify in the design of the common lookup table, and then how we're going to modify it. So we'll take it in that order. Okay? The common lookup table. Let's go to the original common lookup table before Lab 6. Okay? So what does this table do for us in our business? This is a control table. It's a reference table. So this table controls the valid values that can be inserted into our business tables. So system user, we have two types of system users, a system admin and a DBA. Those are the only two system admin types. Right, and we have contacts in our contact table. We have two types of contacts, two contact types, an employee or a customer. And those are the only two that we've defined in our business of contact types. Okay? And so when we go and we do an insert into the contact table, we need to say whether it's a customer or an employee, whether that contact type is a customer or an employee. So how do we do that? That's where we do our subselect to the common lookup table to get that foreign key value. So we don't put, let's say we have a customer, we're inserting a customer record into the contact table. And rather than putting the word customer into the contact type of the contact table, we come to the common lookup table because that contains our list of valid values. And we say find in the contact table, in the common lookup table, find the row where the context is contact, because we're dealing with the contact table, and where the common lookup type is customer. And so Oracle comes here and it says, okay, in the common lookup context, I find contact, we're dealing with the contact table, and and I find customer in the common lookup type. So this is the row that I have identified, and then we say take that common lookup ID, select the common lookup ID from the common lookup table, where the common lookup context is contact and the common lookup type is customer, and then take that common lookup ID and insert that into our contact table as the contact type. Okay, so that's how we use the common lookup table. If someone tried to insert a value, a contact value, a contact type of manager. Let's say they said, okay, we have this contact and this contact is a manager. And so the Oracle code, our insert code, would say go to the common lookup table, find the context, common lookup context of contact, so we're in the contact table, and match on the common lookup type that says manager. And Oracle would come back and say invalid, right? Manager does not exist in the common lookup table, therefore you cannot insert a contact type of manager. Ah, okay. We only have contact types of employees or customers in our database. Okay? All right. Now, what are the flaws of this common lookup table? Why do we need to modify the common lookup table? We find our first flaw when we look at member here. And so member is member table, it's a membership, right? And so we look at member and we have in the member table we have a common lookup type of individual and a common lookup type of group, and then we have Discover card, MasterCard, and Visa card. Well, those are different things, right? So these first two, individual and group, they apply to the membership type, but these other three, they apply to the credit card type, right? Not the membership type. So let's do here a describe on the member table, and here we see, so when we create a membership, we have a member ID, and then we have the member type, and that would be individual or group. And then we have an account number, and then we have the credit card type, and that would be MasterCard, Visa card, or Discover card. But in our common lookup table doesn't distinguish between these two different columns. Individual and group apply to the member type column, and credit card number applies to the credit card type column, right? Or the credit card name applies to the credit card type column. Okay? So, in our common lookup table, we can't distinguish between the columns. And so we're going to add a column to our common lookup table where we can do that. So we'll be able to say, for the member table, these first two apply to the member type, and then these three apply to the column credit card type. Okay, so we're going to add a common lookup column. Okay, so we've been talking about these are table names, okay, and these are all table names here. Well, let me finish that thought. Okay, so that is one of our flaws. Okay, we can't distinguish what columns that these values for member apply to, so we're going to add that common lookup column. That takes care of one of the design flaws. That will fix one of the design flaws. Okay, the other design flaw shows up here in rows 1008, 1009, where we have multiple. What does multiple mean? Multiple means that this home and work applies to multiple tables. But we can't tell, looking at this, we can't tell what tables it applies to. But it applies to the address table and the telephone table. So because we have home addresses and work addresses, and we have home telephones, and we have work telephones. And they are very different things. Addresses and telephones are different things, but we've mixed different things here by this generic word multiple, and we can't enforce these values into the tables we want to enforce in, address table and telephone table. So what do we do about that? What do we do to fix that? So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this common lookup context column eventually. By the end of the lab, we're going to alter the table and delete this column. And we're going to replace it with a column called common lookup table column. And we're going to make all of these table names. And we're not going to allow, and we're not going to use this multiple anymore. So to do that, then we need to have address. We need to have the address table and the telephone table in here instead of multiple. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to reuse these two rows, 1008 and 1009, and we're going to redefine these two rows to be the address table rows. Okay, so we'll have row 1008 be the address table, common lookup type of home. That will be represent the home address, and line 1009 represent the work address. Okay, so that will take care of home address, work address, but we still have telephone. We've got to get telephone in here. So what will we do for that? For that, we will do an insert two rows. We'll insert a telephone row with home and a telephone row with work, and so we have home telephones and work telephones in our common lookup table. Okay. All right. I'm going to go through that one more time, looking at the instructions here in the lab. Let me first say that the implementation instructions for the lab start down here where it says implementation steps. So Brother McLaughlin has some, he calls it hints for step 4. So some preview or background information. What you do, you go down here to the implementation steps. Okay, 4A, and this is where you actually start doing the code, right? Doing your work. And as you're doing your code and you're kind of looking at what's going on here, you can refer back up to these hints to help understand the concepts and what you're doing down here in the implementation. Okay, so that's what that's for, and just but the implementation starts here, 4A. Okay, let's follow this through a little bit. So for A, drop the common lookup N1 and common lookup U2 indexes, and you can do that, right? You can look up and create the command to drop the indexes. Here's your validation query, and here's your validation result, and and you'll know that you have dropped the indexes correctly when you're only left with primary key index. Okay, and then for B, step 4B, you add the 3 new columns to the common lookup table. So you'll do the alter table and you'll add those columns. And again, we're adding this common lookup code column, but we're really not using that in this lab. Okay, and what are the specifications for those columns that you're adding? Well, just look down here to the validation result, and down here you see common lookup table, varchar 2, 30, and all 3 of those are the same. So you do your alter table, add those columns with those specifications. Okay, then you have your validation query, you run that, and then your validation result. Now the structure of your table has changed, and you have these 3 new columns in your table. All right. Then for C, migrate data and populate or seed new columns with existing data. So in this table right here, what Brother McLaughlin's showing you is the original common lookup tables as a representation of that, right? So in this common lookup context, and this is just what we talked about, these are table names except for these 2 rows that say multiple, right? And now we have the common lookup table, the common lookup column have been added now to the table. What are we going to put into these columns? Well, we want to put the table name. So all we need to do is copy from the common lookup context into the common lookup table, because this is the table name. Okay, so contact, and we copied that over here to say the common lookup table of contact, and we do that with all of the table names and system user and member and item, and that all works fine. That's all we have to do to get the common lookup table name, except where it says multiple, because that's not a table name. But we said we're going to reuse those rows, and we're going to call those rows, we're going to make those address table. Okay, so where it says multiple, we're going to put address table in the common lookup table column. Okay. Now the common lookup column, what column in the contact table does this value refer to? It's the contact type, right? And if we go down, and then for individual and group, that's the member type, and for system user, DBA, and sysadmin, that's the system user type. So it's the table name with type added on the end. So we're going to take advantage of that naming convention and construct the value that goes into this column, the common lookup column, by concatenating the table name with underscore type. Okay? That will work for most of our rows, but not for all of our rows. And we'll talk about that in a little more in just a minute. Okay? And so these instructions that he's giving you here, that's what he's walking you through here, so that when you get down to here, that's what you've done, right? Contact from here has been copied over to here, where it says multiple, now it says address, and it will say contact type, and then the other table names and type, and then these two rows will say address type, home and work, and we will be fairly close to having what we want once we've done that. Okay. How do you do that? The way you do that, okay, you see a lot of instructions here, but the way you do that, you go to the videos and you look at this 3 updates video, and he gives you the code. He gives you the code to do that. So in the 3rd update, use that code. Okay, use that code, and that will give you most of what of the updates that need to be done, okay, in the common lookup table. What else? Then there are a couple of other things that need to be done in the common lookup table. I can't emphasize enough, that video and that code does what Brother McLaughlin is describing here up to this point. Okay? So we took care of address here, but we still have telephone, because telephone used these 2 rows for reference that said multiple. So we said we need to insert 2 new rows. Okay, so that's what this step is. You add 2 new rows to the common lookup table to support home and work for home telephones and work telephones. And then you see in this table depicted then the inserts. We have telephone and telephone type and home and work. Okay. Right. When you have run that 3 updates, that 3rd update code that he gives you, when you have run that, your database will look like this. Okay, so I've done a select on the common lookup table here, and now you see that we have the common lookup table column. We have, okay, system user from context has now been copied over, system user, contact has been copied over, contact member has been copied over, it says member. Where it says multiple, it now says address, and then item is now here, and then the common lookup column has been constructed so that it says system user type, contact type, and then we see member type. So that update, when it gets done running, has all member type here. But that's not correct, right? Because we have credit cards here, and they're really credit card type. Okay, so we need to do one more update to correct this common lookup column here to credit card type for these rows. Okay, and then these rows will be correct. How do we do that? I'm going to give you that code. Okay, so let's go here to my lab, and so this is the update, that 3rd update, and that's essentially the code that that Brother McLaughlin gives you there with the case statement, and you end up with what we just looked at, right? And everything says, and on the member table, everything says member type, because that's how we have constructed it here. So we need to do one more update. We need to go and update the common lookup table, and we need to find the columns where the common lookup type is Discover card, MasterCard, or Visa card. And when we find those columns, we need to update the common lookup column to say credit card type. Okay, so I'm going to uncomment this, So update common lookup, set common lookup column equals credit card type, where the common lookup type is in Discover card, MasterCard, or Visa card. Okay, so Oracle will find those 3 rows and then update this common lookup column. Okay, so save that, and I go to my lab here, and I run my script, and now I run my query again, and now you see over here in the common lookup column, now it's correct. Okay, now we have the common lookup, we've got member table, and column is credit card type for Discover card, MasterCard, and Visa card. All right, then you do your 2 inserts for the telephone table, and you then have these rows added where the common lookup type of home, the table is telephone, and the column is telephone type for home, and then work, common lookup type of work for table telephone and column telephone type. Okay, after you've done the inserts. All right, let's keep moving, and go back and replay that if you need to understand exactly what we did there. Okay, now we come to this step. Let me stop it right there. Okay. Update the now obsolete foreign key values in the telephone type column of the telephone table to their correct values, which are found in the new rows of the common lookup table. What does that mean, and how do we do that? Okay, let's go back to our SQL Plus here. And I first want to look at address, okay? Well, let's deal with telephone. Let's deal with telephone. We'll come back and look at address. Okay, so let's select star from telephone and look at our telephone table. What's in there? Okay, we've got the telephone ID column, then we have the contact that telephone belongs to, the address associated with that telephone, and then the telephone type. And here we see this is a foreign key pointing to the common lookup table, right? And this telephone type, it's 1008, and it's 1008 for all of these telephones. What does that mean to us? That means this is pointing to the common lookup table, right? So we go to the common lookup table and we say row 1008, and that was the multiple. That's where we set it, right? The context was multiple, and it says home. So 1008 is home. Okay? So since they are all 1008, they're all home telephones. We have all home telephones, no work telephones in our database yet. Okay? Back up here, currently it's pointing to row 1008, which was multiple and home. But now, row 1008 is for the address table only, not the telephone table. It's for the address table only. So we need to point the telephone type somewhere else. And where do we want to point to? These are all home telephones. We want to point to row 1016, right? Common lookup ID 1016, where we have home and the table is telephone and it's telephone type. Okay, how do we do that? Now here's where it would be really tempting to say, oh, we just go into the telephone table and we just update that column, every row in that column, and we just change telephone type to 1016. And that would be hard coding a foreign key value. And although that is tempting, we're not going to do that in our class here, because then because we need to learn how to do this correctly as developers, and so that's what we are going to do. So how do we do that? How do we do that? I'm going to go to a crude paint screen here and just show you how I think through this and how I construct that code to do that update. Okay, so again, this just represents our telephone type, and I suggest and urge you to draw it out when you're trying to construct SQL statements. Draw it out in whatever way helps you to understand, right, how to construct the code, rather than just, you don't just jump in and start writing SQL code. You construct, right, the SQL code. When you get done, you have one nice, concise SQL command, but that's not the way you really think about it as you construct that command. Okay, so telephone type is 1008, and in our common lookup table, that ID, common lookup ID row 1008 is now address. We have to change this telephone type now to point to row 1016, telephone or common lookup ID 1016, which is the telephone table and home telephone. Okay, so how do we tell Oracle to do that? So we're dealing with the telephone table. Okay, so update telephone. Okay, and then the next place I go to is the where. We have to tell Oracle which rows to update. So Oracle, go to update the telephone table and update these rows, and the where tells Oracle which rows to update. Okay, so here's our subselect, and let's look at what this subselect does. Where, okay, so select common lookup ID from common lookup. Okay, so hi Kylie.
Hey.
I'm working on my class right now, so I'll be down to play in a few minutes. Okay.
No, I'm not coming up to play. I just want to let Mama's iPad so I can play her games.
Okay. Let's find that. It's right here.
It's there. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, we got Grandma's iPad for Kylie. All right. So in this subselect, we tell Oracle the same steps now, sub-steps here. Go to the common lookup table. Go to the common lookup table and and what row are we interested in? So go to the common lookup table and find the row where the common lookup table column is now address. Okay, this is the row we're interested in finding, where the common lookup table column says address, and the common lookup type is home. So we want Oracle to come to the common lookup table, match on address in the common lookup table column and home in the common lookup type column, and get that common lookup ID and return that common lookup ID 1008. Okay, so Oracle will go match on address, match on home here, and Oracle will find this 1008. Okay, so Oracle will then bring back the common lookup ID 1008, and that's what will be right here. Okay, so where in the common lookup table the row is 1008, now take that and go to the telephone table, okay, because we're updating the telephone table, and where the telephone type, where the telephone type is 1008, this value that came back. So now go to the telephone table, and we're going to update the telephone type column. So look in that column and find that value that you just brought back from the common lookup table and match on that. And so it's bringing back 1008, and now Oracle will match on all of the rows, right? Because all the telephone type in all of the rows is 1008. And so now Oracle is holding on to those rows, and it's all the rows. In this case, it's all the rows, and Oracle says, okay, now I found all the rows. Now what do I do? Now, Oracle, once you've found those rows, now set the telephone type to now this value from the common lookup table. Okay, so now let's go through this subselect and see what this subselect does. Go to the common lookup table and match on where the common lookup table name is telephone, and I included here the common lookup type. This will find the right row without having the common lookup type included, but for completeness I put the common lookup type here, and or the common lookup column here, and the common lookup type is home. Okay, so Oracle, go to the common lookup table, match on telephone and home in these columns. Then take the common lookup ID that you find, bring that back. Okay, and so Oracle will now go to the common lookup table and look for telephone in the common lookup table column. It will look for telephone type in the common lookup column, and Oracle will look for home in the common lookup type column. Here's the match, and Oracle will return this value, 1016. Okay. Now, once you have that, once Oracle has that value in hand, it returns that value right here, 1016, and we say set telephone type to that value. Okay, so this will set telephone type to 1016 in all the rows that were a match in this subselect, which were all the rows in the table where it was 1008. Okay, so everywhere that the telephone type is currently 1008 will now be set to 1016. Okay, that's how it works. Now you look at this code here, and this isn't executable code, right? So it's pseudocode, but that's how I construct my SQL. I don't worry about the exact syntax. I'm constructing what I want Oracle to do for me. And now that I have this pseudocode here, now I can take this, and I want you now to go and create the update statement with the correct syntax that does execute and that does perform this this function that we want to do, okay? This update. All right, so now you know how to go do that update. But another thing, we've only accounted for home telephones here. So you could say, well, Brother White, we only have home telephones, so really we're done. But we as developers, we need to account for work telephones. We need to make sure that our code is inclusive of handling work telephones. Okay, so you have to do that. You go, okay, how do we do that? There are two ways to do that. All right, and the simplest way is to just have another update statement. So update telephone and set telephone type, but here make this work and make this work. So change home to work and change home to work, and it should, and it will perform the same function, looking for where the telephone table might currently be pointing to multiple and home, or address and home is where it points to now, and update any of those columns to now point to the one that is telephone and work. Did I say, so work, where it points to address and work, to now have it point to telephone and work, and that will handle that case. Okay, so a second update statement that that just looks for work here instead of home. Another way to do that, a more elegant way to do that, is in one update statement by using a case statement inside. Okay, so you could come in here and set telephone type and then do a case, and you case on address and home versus address and work, and then you can do it all in one SQL statement, update statement, rather than two update statements. All right, but I will accept either way for this lab. Okay, you've done a lot of work on this lab, so you can do either way. Okay, so now we have done the step, update the now obsolete foreign key values of telephone type in the telephone table to their correct values, which are found in the two new rows of the common lookup table. Okay, then here's your validation query, and then well, that validation query is on the table structure, and then this validation query is on the values, and And then we have one more validation query. And here, this validation query looks at address and telephone. And I said we were going to come back and talk about address. So let's just do that. Let's select star from address. And this isn't quite as readable, but look at address type here. So for all these addresses, address type, where does it point to in the common lookup table? It points to row 1008. And all of them down here, as we look down, all of them point to row 1008, which, if we go up here to our common lookup table, originally that was multiple and home. So these are all home addresses. But do we need to change anything? No, we don't need to change anything because they're still pointing to the right place because we reused this row and it's now our address table row, and our address table is pointing to this row 1008. So nothing we need to change. And if we had work addresses, they would be pointing to row 1009 already, and so we would not need to do anything about those either. All right, so the address table is already taken care of because it already points to these rows, and we're reusing these rows for the address table. Makes sense? Okay, so back to this validation result, and what is this result telling us? So that for the address table address type of home, a home address, there are 15 addresses that have an address type of home, and there are 0 addresses that have an address type of work. That point to the common lookup type of work, right? And then for telephone, there are 15 telephones that point to home telephone, and no telephones that point to work telephone, right? And that's what we knew already by going in and querying our table. And this is the validation that our restructuring and moving the values and updating values accordingly all worked correctly with this validation right here. Okay? Okay, we are almost done. Step 4D. Now, remove the obsolete columns and apply constraints. So now here's where you alter the table and drop the common lookup context column. We don't need that column anymore. And then we are going to alter the table, the common lookup table, and put not null constraints on the common lookup table column and the common lookup column. We've put values into those columns now, and so now we can go and put a constraint on those columns, not null constraint. Okay, and your validation query, and then now you see that these two columns now say not null, validating that the constraint worked and is now on there. All right, now we're going to do one last thing, create a unique index across these 3 columns. Okay, so create one unique index on these 3 columns: common lookup table, column lookup column, and column lookup type, and that will help Oracle go and look up those values faster, find those values faster by having that index defined. Okay, then your validation query for your index your validation results, and that shows that the index was created. Common lookup U2. Okay, and you're done. Some notes down here, and that's just stuff that we talked about as far as how is the common lookup table used, and that's what Brother McLaughlin is giving you down here at the end of the lab. But we already talked about that, so you already know all of that now. Okay, that is Lab 6. Help each other. Get with Josh. If you need to review and replay parts of this video to grasp what's going on and to understand it, get with me if you don't and you have further questions. Okay? That's it for Lab 6.